Okay, so our module 1 is on the environment and science behind it. So to start our discussion, we'll define what is environment. So environment, it refers to the totality of external conditions affecting the life, development, and survival of an organism. So you as human being, as an organism, so everything that surrounds you is actually your environment. So our environment has different components. So I have a table here discussing the different environmental components. So to start, we have the air. Now on the second and third column, these are the key parameters to check on their quantity as well as their quality. Okay, let's start with air. So for air, um, in terms of area coverage, so we will be looking into the areas with good quality. Now, how are you going to identify if the air has a good quality, if the area has a good quality? So it means you will look into the key parameters critical for the air. So what are these? We have SO2, NO2, total suspended particulates, particulate matter, and PM10. Now, for water, another component of the environment, so we'll be considering the amount that will satisfy the needs of the reference for defining environment. So this also includes the number of water bodies that could be source of safe specific needs of the reference. To identify the quality, the good quality of water, so we also have key parameters in here. So what are these? We have the biological oxygen demand, dissolved oxygen, and coliform. These are just some. Another component of the environment is your flora and fauna. So these are your plants and animals. So if we are talking about flora and fauna, we are talking about biodiversity. So biodiversity, that is the number of species in a certain area. So we are also looking into those area with high biodiversity or biodiverse areas. Now, to check for the quality, it is important to take note of the presence of endemic and endangered species in an ideal habitat. So when we speak of endemic species, these are species that can be found in a specific area. Example, Philippine eagle. Philippine eagle is endemic to the Philippines. It means this species is only found in the Philippines. Next, we have the land. So area fit for use of the reference for specific purpose. When we are looking into the quality of the land, we are identifying its soil quality, nutrient content, permeability, erosion potential, aesthetics, and orderliness. So it means we are looking into the edaphic factors. So ano yung kalidad ng lupa? Next, we have the minerals and fossil fuels. So for the quantity or area coverage, we are identifying the amount of reserves or areas with mineral reserves. To check for the quality, we are looking into the commercial value of these reserves. Another component is climate and natural hazards. So for the quantity, the parameters in here are the frequency of extreme weather events, the areas prone to natural hazards, areas with certain climate characteristics or change projections. Now, to check for the quality, we are looking into the parameters such as seasons and how conducive they are to the reference of an intended activity. Now, also part of the environment are actually the people and culture. So the parameters for people and culture, these are your population, number of indigenous people or community, development activities, and number of cultural resources. Now, if we are identifying or looking into the quality of people and nature, the parameters are, of course, the quality of life, health, economy, gross happiness, as well as preservation of indigenous culture and cultural resources. Now, lastly, we have the built-up areas or urban centers and living spaces. So when we speak of built-up areas, these are areas wherein residential houses, buildings are being constructed. So for the parameters in terms of quantity, we are looking into the percent of built-up areas as compared to those areas for agriculture and for other land uses. Lastly, to check for its quality, we need to identify the ecosystem services that these built-up areas provide to the people. So these are your environmental components as well as the key parameters in terms of quantity and quality. Now, there's a certain field that is focused on studying the environment, and that is environmental science. So environmental science is the field of science that studies the interaction of the components of the environment and the relationships and effects of these components with the reference for defining the environment. So environmental science is a multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary field. Particularly, it's a normative science that focus on how the biotic and abiotic factors interact with each other and how they affect each other. Primarily, one aspect of environmental science is to look for solutions of different environmental problems that people encounter. Now, we have three main goals of environmental science. One, to learn how the natural world works. Second, to understand how humans interact with the environment. And lastly, to determine how humans affect the environment. So these three main goals of environmental science, we can see that environmental science is actually a broad discipline. It means we are considering other field of sciences, including economics, social science, ecology, biology. All of these sciences are important or as important for us to know or understand so that we will be able to understand what this environmental science is. Now, let's talk about the attributes of the Earth or how the natural world works. So our Earth is divided into 4 spheres. We have the lithosphere or geosphere. We have the atmosphere. We have the hydrosphere and the biosphere. So your lithosphere or geosphere, it has 3 components. We have the crust, the mantle, and the core. I believe you have discussed this in your elementary or in your high school. Now, your atmosphere is actually your gases present in the air. Then your hydrosphere, these are all the water bodies. And lastly, your biosphere, it is where life dwells. So in the new definition of biosphere, it also includes the life in your lithosphere, atmosphere, and hydrosphere. So these are your 4 spheres of the Earth. Now, these spheres are interacting with each other. So some examples of, or some phenomena happened in the history of the Earth are presented in your screen. So we have 3 scenarios here. One is the drifting of the continent. So in terms of, if we are talking about this drifting of the continent, in history of the Earth, we only have 1 continent. So this continent, it's called a supercontinent. It is called the Pangaea. So we also have 1 super ocean, so water body, that is Panthalassa. So, however, due to the movement of the tectonic plates, this supercontinent is divided into 2. So we have 2 continents now. We have the Laurasia and the Gondwanaland. Now later on, because every year our tectonic plate moves an inch, so these 2 continents are further divided into the 7 continents that we have now. So that is the drifting of the continent. So you can see here that the geosphere in particular is actually interacting with other spheres. Another scenario here is the glaciation or the consequent global warming and fall or rise of the sea level. Last scenario is the meteorite impacts affecting various spheres. The meteorite impacts in particular, if we will look into the history of the Earth, the meteorite impacts actually affected, in particular, the biosphere. It led to actually the mass extinction of various species. Now, another examples in your screen are the interaction between and among spheres. So one is the production of oxygen by plants enrich the atmosphere and consequently the hydrosphere with oxygen. So in this first example, we can see the interaction now of the biosphere, the atmosphere, and the hydrosphere. Next example, precipitation of vast amounts of iron from seawater gave way to the deposition of huge banded iron ore deposits found in continents such as Africa, North America, and Australia. So this time, it is an interaction between your geosphere and your hydrosphere. Next example is the iron catastrophe. So iron catastrophe is an event where there was a sequestration of oxygen by iron. As an aftermath, oxygen concentration in the atmosphere and hydrosphere gradually increased, giving way to the development of the ozone layer, which protects organisms against ultraviolet rays from the sun. So in here, we could see the interaction between your atmosphere, hydrosphere, and the geosphere, in which your iron is coming from. Another scenario is the melting of the ice. So at least twice in the history of the Earth is wrapped from equator to pole by thick ice. So this has a devastating effect on the biosphere as well as on the atmosphere and hydrosphere. Another scenario is the snowball Earth, wherein the oxygen reacted with methane. So it is a powerful greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. This is actually your the oxygen interacting with methane, forming carbon dioxide. So consequently, the power of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere to trap heat coming from the sun was drastically reduced. So we could see in these scenarios the interaction of the four spheres. However, the humans are also part of the environment. So creating actually a new sphere called the human sphere. So in your screen now, it shows you how the humans interact with and affect the environment. So we could classify this in terms of needs and risk. So when we talk about needs, these are actually the positive inputs or positive factors that can provide to the human sphere as well as human sphere providing to the another sphere. So risk, these are actually, of course, risk that the specific spheres provide to the human sphere and human sphere providing back to the another sphere. So let's start with the geosphere. In terms of needs, so your geosphere provides habitat, soils, nutrients, minerals, and energy resources to the human sphere. In return, humans can actually provide government policies to protect the soil and to conserve resources in the geosphere. Now, in terms of risk, your geosphere can actually cause these were earthquakes, volcanic eruption, tsunamis, and landslides are happening. So in terms of risk, humans now in return, they can cause soil pollution, mineral and energy resources depletion, reclamation of wetlands, sea and lakes and rivers. Okay, your atmosphere now. Your atmosphere in terms of needs, the atmosphere provides the following to the human sphere. So, of course, air, nutrients. It also provides shield against the sun's ultraviolet rays through ozone layer, protection against temperature extremes, means of transportation, and communication. Now, in return, humans, to protect this services, ecosystem services that the atmosphere provide, the humans can develop air pollution control technology and policies. Now, your atmosphere, it is also where your typhoons, hurricanes, heat waves are happening. Now, in terms of the risk provided by humans to the atmosphere, of course, we can cause destruction of the ozone layer with our activities, increase in greenhouse gases, and as well as air pollution. This time, let's talk about the hydrosphere. Your hydrosphere, it provides water for human consumption. Now, in return, the human beings can develop water pollution control technology and policies to conserve the water in the hydrosphere. Now, in terms of risk, one major risk that the hydrosphere can provide is flooding due to extreme rainfall. So in return, the humans can also cause water pollution, depletion of water, and other resources that are fit for human consumption, affecting actually our hydrosphere. Lastly, your biosphere. Your biosphere, it provides oxygen, food, materials for clothing, shelter, medicine, and other purposes. Now, human beings in return, they could develop policies and technologies that will promote conservation of biodiversity and among others. Now, in terms of risk, your biosphere also acts as a medium for transmitting toxins and diseases to humans. So, there are conspiracy theories in the COVID-19 pandemic in which the COVID-19 or the COVID-19 virus actually originated from the bath. So your bath now is actually your medium. If you will believe that conspiracy theory, your bath is actually your medium for transmitting of diseases to human beings. So these are what we call the zoonotic diseases. Then in return, the humans can also cause extinction of some species, depletion of renewable resources, and other stress affecting the capacity of the biosphere to provide valuable resources. So based on this table, we could see that human beings are actually an important component of the biosphere, or in particular of the environment, because of the role that they play. So human beings, in terms of environmental problems, it is only human beings who can mitigate or reverse the bad effects of the anthropogenic activities or the activities of human beings. Now, there are a lot of efforts being conducted at global and local levels so that we could reverse the effects of humans on the Earth's systems. Now, let's have a quick review of this chapter. So, one, environment refer to the totality of external conditions affecting the life, development, and survival of an organism. We have also discussed the environmental science as a field focused on environment, studying environment in general. Now, our Earth has four spheres. We have the lithosphere or geosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere, and biosphere. Now, we also talk about how these four spheres interact with and among each other. Now, of course, human beings are also interacting with these spheres, and we have already also discussed how humans interact and affect the environment. So that concludes our module 1, the environment and science behind it.